The Alaska Summit, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan are trying to maintain a strong posture with their Chinese counterparts, but who's winning this battle? Joining us now to talk more about this is former ambassador to the Netherlands and former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Pete Hoekstra. Also with us, the president of the Center for Security Policy, Fleitz. He's also a former national security chief of staff under the Trump administration. Pete, Fred, great to see you both. Ambassador, first to you. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, had some tips for the current Biden team. Here he was on Newsmax last night.
What the administration needs to do is be strong, to impose real costs on China when they misbehave, and to make sure that American freedom and security are at the front of every policy element with respect to China. What the Chinese understand is steady, strong power, a commitment from American leaders who say, we're not going to allow you to push us around, we're not going to let you push our friends around the world.
Did you see any sign of strength yesterday, Ambassador?
Not really. It was very disappointing. What I saw was a Secretary of State that maybe had not read his briefing memo, or maybe had not even gotten the right briefing memo. This is not the China from 2014 and 2015 that Ambassador Blinken or Secretary of State Blinken might have been used to. You know, when I was in the Netherlands, we started, and my colleagues in Europe all saw the development of what we called and others called wolf warrior diplomacy, a China that is much more aggressive in terms of pushing back against the United States, a China that is much more aggressive in putting out its propaganda using social media and a lot of other, media techniques to be aggressive and very effective. And I think that the way that China responded to the Secretary of State was totally unexpected by the Secretary of State, which tells me he wasn't ready for these wolf warriors that China has evolved into.
Yeah, no, that's certainly apparent. He did not look confident in his delivery of that. Those topics, were mentioned, but they're not actually on the table to discuss, Fred. And the question is, why even have the meeting in the first place? Fred, I know you also wanted to talk as well, Fred, about the ODNI report that came out this week, the repackaging of this information for political purposes here. You wrote a great piece that's up on the Federalist about it. Talk to us about why the ODNI now is saying that the election was rigged, or...
Well, they're not saying it's rigged. I'm saying that this report was rigged. The report says that, just like in 2016, the Russians again try to fix the election for Trump. Now, the report in the 2016 election wasn't valid either. It was turned out that it was rigged and written by a handful of analysts. What's a problem with this report is that it ignores a politicization report that came out in January that China analysts were holding back their assessments of Chinese meddling in the election because they didn't like President Trump and they didn't want to help his policies. That is not mentioned in this report, John. And if that's true, and given what happened with the last report, you can't take this new report seriously.
Right. And what I was trying to say there is that this report seems to indicate that Russia was trying to help President Trump here rig the election. And your report is that the report is actually rigged. And I do encourage everybody to go check that out on the Federalist as well. Now, Pete, President Biden is weighing a 6-month extension now for U.S. troops to remain in Afghanistan. And this is going to be very telling, I think, about what we can expect for the next 4 years, what happens here. The deadline to withdraw, which was negotiated under President Trump, is May 1st. But I wanted us to take a listen to some comments these Taliban warriors, these warlords, were making in response to the Biden administration's plans. They were asked about the current administration. Here's what they had to say.
د جو بایدن لپاره د موږ مشورم دا ده چې د ټرمپ تګلاره خپله کو خپل عسکر وباسي د ملک نور د نه ځان خوږوي نه د خپل ملک اقتصاد خرابوي چې هغه بل چاره هم نه لري.
Now, he's saying that they win just because they are in war and that President Biden should hold up to President Trump's agreements here. Do you think he will?
No, I think the indications are that the president is going to extend our commitment into Afghanistan. The real question we now need to start asking the administration is why? What are you going to accomplish in 6 months that we haven't accomplished over the last 16 years? What more are you going to accomplish? This seems like one more example where just because the previous administration did something, the Biden administration is going to do it differently. So whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's the border, whether it is China, whether it is Russia, if Trump was going to the right, this administration is now going to go to the left without really taking a look at whether the previous policy actually had any inherent value or not, which in many cases it did. And we are seeing that many of the just changes in direction without thinking through the process is leading to some very, very negative results for America and in our foreign policy. And the rest of the world is watching the missteps that this administration is making early on. They're not seeing this experienced team coming in that they were led to believe. They're seeing some folks that are making some very amateurish and beginners mistakes.
Fred, those Taliban warriors were laughing about the United States and the Biden administration. And, you know, they say they have no qualm, no beef with the Americans as long as they're allowed to live as they want. And they believe they have the right to live under Sharia law. This seems inevitable that the Taliban are eventually going to take control over Afghanistan. You know, to Pete's point, what is 6 months going to do?
No, that's the point. Are we going to be in Afghanistan for the rest of time? It would be nice to solve Afghanistan's problems. But the American people are tired of these perpetual troop deployments. They want America's troops to come home. They want other nations to take care of these problems. I think Biden's going to send more troops into Syria. Actually, he already has. Right. And he's going to send more troops into Iraq. He's going to stop the U.S. withdrawal of troops from Iraq. That's not what the American people want. They're tired of these endless wars. It's time for U.S. troops to come home.
President Trump and President Obama were elected in part on promises to end these wars. And here we are 20 years later. The fight continues. Pete, Fred, thank you so much. I should say Ambassador.
You're fine.
We've known each other too long, Ambassador. Hoekstra, great to see you as always. All right, coming up, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert shares what the Democrats fear most. We'll tell you what has them shaking in their heels. That's up next.